I'm Alex Jones, radio and television host here in Austin, Texas. In the next hour and a half, you're going to see a picture of treason, a picture of the loss of sovereignty of our nation, the United States of America, not by accident, but by design. And it's incredible, those that have gone before me. The New American Magazine, books like None Dare Call It Conspiracy, 1972 by Gary Allen. They documented everything that is happening. They didn't have crystal balls. They read what the enemy itself was saying. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change has nothing to do with climate and everything to do with taking over our national parks as collateral on the national debt, which is owned over half by foreign European banks. Most of your politicians are bought and paid for. Most Americans have been mind-numbed by the modern bureaus of propaganda known as the mainstream media. We're going to go through 12 states over 3 weeks and have interviews with city managers, Navy officers, people on the street, and show you the UN signs carefully hidden behind the national parks, the certificate of ownership tacked on the door of our nation. We're also going to show you film evidence and documents of the communist Chinese moving into the Long Beach naval base. Yes, Costco, the military, moving in, and President Clinton being on the payroll. We're also going to tell you about the Panama Canal being handed over to the Chinese and how this was a long-term plan of David Rockefeller, because that is a vassal state which he controls. This is very serious. This is not a joke. Then we'll also visit Oklahoma City and talk about what really happened there, how the government was involved using military black ops squads to destroy that building, like Hitler burnt the Reichstag in 1933, to scare the American public into submitting. Then we'll get back to Austin, Texas, and show you over 200 youth being indoctrinated at a Model United Nations meeting at the University of Texas. Elementary, junior high, and high school students being taught about global government. Make no mistake, our culture is under attack, and if we don't turn away for just 5 minutes from the football games, from the bread and circus, we are doomed to a 100% tax rate. Socialism is a movement of the economic elite, not of the downtrodden masses. It is a way to consolidate wealth criminally. And remember, wealth is never destroyed. It is merely transferred. So again, thank you for joining us. We did the best we could to bring you just a small piece of the picture of America under siege. Our story starts in southern Arizona, where the UN is taking over. Just look at the size of this beautiful organ pipe cactus. And the biggest concentration of these in the world is now part of this 500,000 acre UN UNESCO environmentalist biosphere. Has nothing to do with the environment. It has to do with control of resources. Gorgeous. Just look at it. Look at the size of that thing. It's got to be, what, 40 feet tall? You're looking at the certificate of ownership of our national parks. So they started the precedent way back in 1968, and by 1976, the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument was beginning to come under international control under the guise of environmentalism. But in 1996, you'll find teeth were added. Now we're fixing to go inside the main visitor center and talk to the head ranger and find out if he's aware of this massive loss of U.S. sovereignty. Have you seen this photograph right here? And I called Bruce Babbitt's office and talked to some of their people, and they told me that that was true at Mammoth Cave, United Nations, a World Heritage Site, an International Biosphere Reserve, and they said, well, yes, and we took it down because people didn't like it. See, y'all don't have that, and y'all never did. And that's the funny part. They only did it in certain parts of the country, and now they've taken the signs down. But you do have this plaque, don't you? You said you have a brass plaque? Right. Just like that one?
Right. Well, parks have to respond to the local community, and I suppose people in the local community objected to those signs. And they complied with them by taking down the sign.
But they did not take down the international order.
It's not a requirement that they have the sign in the first place.
I got you.
So in order to be accommodating, they went along with the local community. You know, we don't have a sign, so it must not be required.
Gotcha. Well, thanks a lot, sir. Appreciate that. Ranger David DeWitt. David DeWitt. Thank you, sir. Here we are at the Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument at the Park Ranger's office. And he told us that he didn't see a problem with the international designation. But he did have to admit, why are they taking down the UN signs but leaving the executive order there? See, they're taking away the contracts from in front of your face so you don't see what's happening. But then they're just continuing with their plans right here. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, Program on Man and Biosphere. On our trip from Central Texas to Southern Arizona, we passed no fewer than 7 biospheres, but we only stopped by the Oregon Pipe Cactus Biosphere. Now we're on our way to Southern California to expose what's going on at the Long Beach Naval Weapons Shipyard. God, man, I want to go swimming.
Whoa, don't close it.
It's like, We're here in Southern California at the Long Beach Naval Weapons Shipyard, one of the only deep water ports in America that our military controls. Actually, only one of 3. And it's the only one on the western side of the United States controlling the Pacific. The Clinton administration decided to shut it down in 1993, and now he's letting his good buddies, the military industrial complex of China, under COSCO, the military industrial shipping firm that is responsible for bringing in slave goods and, some evidence shows, mafia influences into our country. This is a major national security breach. We must do something, and do something now. Only the local people and a judge here in town in Long Beach, California, have the will to stand up against this tyranny. And what is the tyranny? There are over 30 million political dissidents in Chinese slave labor camps in the mainland of China. This has been widely reported. Why then would we allow COSCO, which is controlled by the bloodthirsty, fascistic leadership of China, to have our only deep water port right in the heart of our western coastline? And something that we really see no reason for is the fact that we have been denied access to this facility, even though it is in the process of being dismantled and closed down. We're not allowed to show you the extensive shipping facilities, cranes, docks, and indoor facilities for working on large ships that China military shipping concern COSCO is going to get. We talked to Ernie McBride, Naval Intelligence here, and he told us that we'd have to call the Navy and get permission to get in. Well, I did that 3 weeks ago and never heard back from them, even though I called the Navy about 15 times. So remember that. Your government, which pretty much at the top level is selling out, thinks there's no problem with the communist Chinese that treat their people like slaves, are gaining our strategic military bases and ports all over this country. But the people on the ground that are actually in the military and are guarding and protecting this place, they think it's terrible because they've got some common sense, because they haven't been paid off like your president has. Again, we have been denied access to this facility. Why is there this obsession in our federal government with weakening our Constitution? Why do these lackeys from Harvard and Yale and other places dislike America so much and are so willing to weaken America so their friends in Europe can control the world? Because that's what it's all about. Make no mistake, this is about weakening America so that the Eastern establishment, which is allied with the European empire, can continue to flourish. This is real politics, not what you're taught by the mainstream media, which are nothing but propaganda bureaus of the corrupt establishment.
I'll get in trouble if I talk anything.
Really? I know, that's understandable.
They tell us not to say anything.
They do?
Yeah.
So you're not supposed to talk about how the Chinese are fighting tooth and nail to get our only deepwater port on the western side of the United States?
We can't say anything.
Well, thank you for at least being a patriot and saying that you don't like it. Thanks a lot. We can show you from outside the base, across the small bay, but it's still hard for you to understand and for us to understand the enormity of this port complex and shipyards that's just being handed over, again, to the communist dictatorship in China. Take a look. Endless. As far as the eye could see, with conning towers and deepwater ports and shipyards and big oil tank facilities for refueling, they've got it all. Ports are power. Wars have been fought over ports, and we're just giving them to them. It's insanity. That's not really insanity. We're being sold out. Our politicians don't care about America. They've been taught the international language of trade. Sell your country out. I'll assure you China and Germany and Japan and England aren't selling out their ports, their military shipyards. This is very dangerous. This is a strategic point in the United States of America.
We left San Diego, but we're not done exposing what's going on with the communist Chinese here inside our nation. In fact, communist is too kind a word for them, that pseudo-political term, that excuse for slavery. It's just called a slave system. And on our way to the high desert to expose what's going on at George Air Force Base, Costco trucks. Yes, we saw no less than 3 Costco trucks bringing in slave goods from the ports on our western seaboard. Well, you're fixing to see George Air Force Base. You're fixing to see Adelanto in Victorville, California, where they're moving in, where they're building 20 mini-malls for slave goods. We're going to talk to the city manager of Adelanto. We're also going to visit these mini-malls. And then we're going to give you a brief intelligence report about exactly what the entire scope is and what the plans are and who the Communist Chinese are working for.
We're now here in Southern California at a little town called Victorville, where George Air Force Base is located. The Chinese have been attempting to acquire the Air Force Base, and we're told may still acquire it. But that's not going to stop them bringing in their slave goods from their over 30 million political dissidents in slave labor camps. Right here, this is the first, we're told by the workers, of 20 such wholesale markets where slave goods will be brought into the U.S. and sold at discount prices to retailers. So here you have it. No more middleman for the Chinese military-industrial complex to sell slave goods. They're actually buying up the land, and this, again, is the first of 20 such facilities to be built. Now we're fixing to go down to the courthouse and get the actual records.
Listen carefully to this interview with Mr. Sakamoto, the city manager of Adelanto, and get his point of view on trade and human rights.
So the town's kind of taken a hit since the base
Very
closure.
bad. Yeah, our unemployment last month was 15.5%.
Can you tell us any details? And I see behind you in y'all's local newspaper, it says massive trade center breaks ground.
and they had purchased a piece of property in Atlanta and proposed the development of 1 million square feet of import-export center type operations to be built here in the community. And the project was approved by the Planning Commission and then subsequently approved by the City Council, strictly around building and zoning type requirements. And since that time, they've gone forward trying to put their project together.
A question about, you said that it's bringing jobs to the area, to this group of small towns here in the George Air Force Base that's been shut down. When was George Air Force Base closed?
1992, December.
1992. That was when all that big base closure stuff came through?
Correct.
You're saying that it will bring jobs. How can American business and workers compete with Chinese slave labor goods?
Well, this portion of the business is going to be the retail portion. They're not going to do any manufacturing here.
I understand that, but the question is, and Amnesty International and many others have categorized this, and we know that in human history, we're not saying it's just China. In human history, near slavery or slavery has pretty much been the way a lot of societies have operated, and some estimates are as high as 30 million political dissidents in slave labor camps in China. And there's the human rights issue, and then on top of it, there's the issue of this isn't even free trade. This is absolute slave labor controlled by the military in China. And the fear is that already, we're not singling y'all out, Walmart, Kmart, Target, every other shopping mall is buying these goods, and they're just middlemen. Doesn't it seem like China's trying to take out the middlemen?
I don't know. I leave the State Department and foreign trade to the federal government because that's their purview and not ours. Well, you were asking a question, and I think your question's well taken in terms of the issue of the human rights abuses that are allegedly taking place in China. I haven't seen them, so I can't speak to them directly. I know our central government, our foreign affairs departments have indicated through any number of their statements that are made that they're likely, or just as likely, concerned as we are in the city of Atlanta for those types of abuses that are taking place there. From our perspective as a city, with virtually 30% of the people in our community on public assistance, my job is to try to provide as many jobs for them as I can possibly provide. The stream of products that's coming here from companies like Nike, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, all of whom have businesses in China now and are producing products in China and bringing them back here to the United States to market them. It's really difficult for a community the size of Atlanta to make a determination as to the difference. You make a good point in terms of cutting out a middleman someplace, and is that proper or is that advantageous? I don't know. It's a real difficult call, because obviously the corporate giants at IBM, Hewlett-Packard, General Electric, all of them who are in mainland China now with factories that are producing goods, are hopefully producing a product where they're paying a good wage to the people who are there, and making sure that the people who are working there are receiving the best kind of care that they can. But nonetheless, products are consistently coming from China. I mean, you said it yourself. You can't go to Kmart, Walmart, Target. You can't go to any of those stores without tipping a box upside down and seeing that the product is made in China. I spoke to a Chinese businessman recently who came to visit here, and his statement to me was very simple. His statement was, I would like to pay my people more money. I would like to pay a decent wage. But when the American companies offer me only 5 or 6% of what they're selling the product for here in the United States, they make it very difficult for me to pay a salary that's competitive. I would like to pay a competitive salary, but as long as the American companies are only willing to pay me 4 cents on the dollar for a product, it becomes impossible for me.
You see in our Congress it being directed, and the president's for it, to some of the patent laws have failed, like Schroeder-Morritt Patent Act, but now others have gotten through where
Surely.
they're just gutting the U.S. patent system. And I think we're being raided by the international corporations. I think China's being raided by the international corporations. And I'm mad at the international corporations, and I'm mad at the partnership you see forming with the international corporations and the Chinese military-industrial complex. I'm sure there's a lot of really good Chinese businessmen, but the biggest business in China is their military, and it's absolutely been reported on and proven totally conclusively that the Chinese military runs most of the businesses in China. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's probably the international question. Just a few more questions.
Surely.
Have members of the community expressed concern over some of the goods coming in from China, both from U.S. corporations and Chinese military corporations, being slave goods?
We have had, I think, 2 residents in our community who have voiced a concern over that same situation that you're alluding to. And they made their comments known at the city council meeting.
Out at Long Beach, most people at the base were against giving them our only deep water port.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, inland in the high mountain area, it seems like people really want more jobs and more opportunities. So it seems like they're willing to kind of, since the big corporations and the federal government turned a blind eye, maybe they're just saying, let's just live. How large is the planned and under construction mall complex? You say it was going to be 1 million square feet?
It's a 50-acre project, and it's a 50-acre project with 1 million square feet. Now that's 20 buildings, 50,000 square feet. You said you had gone out to see that pad?
Yes, right down the road.
Right down the road. You have to picture 20 of those if you can. I mean, that's 1 million square feet is a lot of square feet.
So to them, it's not good in their money manipulation game to even have a very successful America. It seems like in some quarters they want to deindustrialize and make it service-oriented.
That's an interesting comment. I hadn't thought much about that from that perspective.
Well, think about it. They hold more stock, as you would say, in the third world. And they don't have that terrible thing called representative democracy there. And they've got thugs that run the places that are more than willing. And they don't have that pesky media there to ever, peek into things. So they can lower our stock value in industrialization as a whole as a country, as the country's a company. Then they can, in the aggregate, make themselves the rulers of us all.
Good point.
Well, thanks a lot, sir.
No, you're welcome. Appreciate you.
If you want to understand how this is all happening and you want to put a stop to it, you have to recognize the elitists that control the trilateralist system. It's a system where whole human populations are supposed to be sold on the chopping block, on the world auction. It's a place where, in the excuse of pragmatism and the future, they really revert to an old system known as slavery. Yes, your leaders are all bought and paid for, and they're using China. They're using the communist thug state of China as the front lines, as the vanguard of the New World Order. They are deindustrializing our nation. They are transferring the production facilities overseas where they have it fully under IMF and World Bank control. And until you realize exactly what the CFR is, that's the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission set up by David Rockefeller in 1973, and the Bilderbergers in Europe, you will not understand the secret government. You will not be able to honestly oppose the conspiracy, the program of slavery. What is the CFR? It is the house of the secret government here in the U.S. The Trilateral Commission is the Senate here in America, and the Bilderbergers are the criminal headquarters of the entire program. They control all of your major electronic media, all of your major print media, all of the editors, all of the senior correspondents. They control your senators. They control your National Security Council, the White House staff. They control all the heads of major top 20 industry and all of the deans and top professors at your major universities. You put this all together, you have a picture of slavery, and then you understand what's going on with China. 1.25 billion slaves plus being leveraged. You see the elitist families, you see their children and grandchildren moving forward. You see the Chinese at Long Beach bringing in their arms. Then you find out that they now have both ends of the Panama Canal that Jimmy Carter gave up, one of the founders of the Trilateral Commission with David Rockefeller. It is a picture of bringing America to its knees because there can be no
strong nations in this system. They must all be under one centralized control. And what does it mean every time? Death and slavery. Those are Chinese children in slave labor camps. CIA hearings in the Senate. Yes, the Central Intelligence Agency brings in the cocaine and heroin and all your narcotics. It is out of control. And there you have it, the container facilities at Long Beach where the slave goods are being brought in by Costco to all your major stores. And if you speak out against it, there'll be a visit to your house by these fellas. Yes, the global love cops, the MJTF. If we allow this type of treason to continue, we're going to pay the price. If we buy these slave goods, it is going to come back on us, and it's already coming back on us today. They think of us all as absolute abject slaves. The only way to avert the police state that is coming on full bore is to illuminate, to put light on who really controls the system, because a slave doesn't even know who rules them. Information is the key. We're doing a story for KJFK radio and film, and I'm not going hiking. I'll probably only be here about an hour, but I still need to pay. How much is it?
$20.
$20.
Doing a story on your biosphere for KJFK radio.
And public television in Austin, Texas.
Okay, leave.
I can?
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Cool. When we got to the Grand Canyon, it was so majestic that I almost forgot what we were there to do. We were there to expose the international takeover of our parklands under the guise of environmentalism. It was so majestic, so expansive, and it brought back childhood memories of when I had been there with my parents. That made me only want to fight more. I'm standing here in northern Arizona overlooking the beautiful Grand Canyon, one of America's most beautiful treasures. And it's very distressing to me and other patriots and people that truly do care about the environment in America that Bill Clinton, with his executive order, January 19, 1996, number 12,986, began the precedent to sign over our national treasures to international control. Yes, this is an international biosphere and World Heritage Site. And guess who controls those? The United Nations. The United Nations is nothing more than a front group for international banks based in Europe and in America. They care nothing about the environment. They care about using it as an excuse to tell you how you can use the environment, to get you used to listening to what they say and what you can do and what you can use. I'm sure y'all have all heard they're planning to restrict cars to the Grand Canyon and bring buses in quite soon. Well, I'm here during peak season at the end of the summer, and I don't see any problem with Americans coming to the Grand Canyon. They're paying exorbitant prices of $20 a car. Wake up and understand that large corporations think in a long-term game. They understand that if they can restrict use to this place and get international control in here, then 10, 20 years down the road, they can start construction and building, which they're already doing, by the way. So we are for real conservation, but we are against organized crime cliques that call themselves international bankers and elite corporations coming in and buying off your politicians like Bill Clinton, who is an incredible traitor to this country, who then signs over promptly our rights to use and to maintain our natural wonders. There's a lot of money in controlling these places. A lot of people come and visit them. Just cut through their lies, and it's sterling simple exactly what's happening. Now let's go talk to some park rangers and other individuals, perhaps some of the tourists here, and see if they've even heard of this terrible crime that's being committed against the American people. This giant land grab. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm conducting a scientific experiment. I want to ask y'all if y'all know about Executive Order signed January 19, 1996 by President Bill Clinton, number 12,986, which designated this as a World Heritage Site under UNESCO, a corporation of the United Nations. None of you heard about this in the mainstream media. None of you heard about it. Nobody's heard about this, have you? Well, they took down the signs in most parks because there was a furor about 3 days after they put up the United Nations signs. No one's heard about it, huh?
Well, see, that's how fascism breeds. The environmentalist movement is now nothing but an arm of corrupt international banks and corporations. They're using it as an excuse for land grabs all over the entire world. Remember this, and check it out. Executive order. Call the Interior Department. Call Bruce Babbitt. Executive order 12,986. It's important. The modern bureaus of propaganda keep this from you.
No sooner had I turned away that some of the crowd began to laugh and call me a kook. I guess they won't take the time to check out the Executive Order 12,986. I guess they don't believe it unless they hear it from Peter Jennings' mouth.
Most people only look on the surface of things. Most people are not conscious. They never question. As you just saw, I asked the people here if they knew about the executive order beginning the long slide towards international control of our wilderness areas and our national parks and monuments. People just don't seem concerned, and that is human nature. But it's not their fault. They haven't been informed. The mainstream media has kept them in the dark. Meanwhile, their rights are being vastly eroded. I'm sure everyone's heard the news. They're planning to close Yellowstone Park to cars. They'll have to come in on buses. That's all part of jacking up the prices. And they're going to restrict cars here in the future. That's all being discussed as we speak. Bruce Babbitt on Meet the Press has said it repeatedly. It's very hard for Americans to make decisions if they're not given good information. And that's the crux of the problem.
President Clinton, with an executive order, an unconstitutional action, has handed over our national parks. Executive Order 12,986. At the Grand Canyon Main Visitor Center, we talked to some of the people at the front desk, and they politely said, yes, we've heard about the UN, but we're not quite sure what's going on. There was some rigmarole, some protest about the UN signs, so they have been moved in some of the national parks. And then later, we got a little visit from the head honchos who were quite rude. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let us take our cameras behind closed doors, where I was threatened with arrest. Well, let's go ahead and go to the actual footage for you.
You've heard about the UN biosphere and manned World Heritage Sites and...
Yeah, well, I worked at Mammoth Cave, too, during one, too.
Yes, they had UN signs there, didn't they?
Right, yeah. Well, they just put those in, though.
They just put the United Nations...
Well, they had one in before, but they're moving them. I don't know, how recently have you been there? 'Cause they were redoing the entranceway, and they're going to put them in a different spot.
We were there about 3 months ago.
Okay, so they probably are pretty much moved, I would think. Because I left, like, 4 months ago.
I have just a question for you. And I know this isn't a policy question. It's just a question of other things. Why do we need the United Nations to put up its signs and to help us oversee our own national parks?
They're not necessarily overseeing our own national parks. Part of what the Biosphere Reserve does, especially in Kentucky, is that it's not for the park, it's for the area outside the park.
Yes, but
so
are you familiar with the executive orders setting up a precedent for world governorship of world parks? And
I've heard bits and tabs, but I haven't read enough about it to say in particular.
But you have seen the UN signs?
Yeah.
But they're not here. See, that's funny though. This park is under that, but they don't put the signs out. I think if it's such a thing of pride that we're getting into the international community, we ought to put the signs out.
Right. Well, those symbols don't have anything to do with how the park runs. That's just a designation that was just an honorary title, basically.
Oh, it's honorary to go to UN insignia.
Yeah. But it's not anything. It helps us maybe get some grants with research and things like that, but that's all it does. It doesn't help control the park in any way.
You mean international money coming in doesn't affect the way the parks would be run?
It's for research and things like that. How does that affect the park?
Well, how it affects it is researchers give recommendations to the parks and to the states, locales, and the federal government.
Right.
And by doing that, they are paying the researchers. That's the key. That's the keystone. That's the Trojan horse. Then they will give the information that the people. You probably heard the term. If you want a survey, you can pay for whatever you want. You tell them what you want in a survey.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Because I really support the parks. I just feel like that I see too much big. I mean, I don't even mean corporations. I mean super old money banks in Europe and other places are really out for big land grabs, and they're instituting the policies. We're hearing it in the universities. It's almost fascistic measures. sometimes. Is there anybody that I can, who will just tell me the same thing you did, but just where I can have a mic on and things?
Well, we have a public affairs officer right here.
Well, you heard me just ask him to just politely talk to a public affairs officer. We were sitting down for about 10 minutes with our cameras off and barely got a shot of her. That's why we had to freeze it. We only got about a half a second of her. She was very rude and drug me to the back and threatened to arrest me for dare to ask questions. Was I some type of terrorist? And you should have seen the monster they had in the back with us. This is all part of America. Yes, if you ask questions, you must be some type of weirdo. Now, there you have a World Heritage Site sign, one of the 2 UN designations that the Grand Canyon has. And under these, I've already told you many times, the Executive Order 12,986, which turns over control to the international community as collateral on the national debt. I want to make a point. All the rangers and people we talked to up to the point at the office were very kind and polite and helpful. It was only the bigwigs, and they openly told us behind closed doors that they had heard about types like us that were asking questions about the UN. We have to be watched. It's flat out corruption. You own and control these public lands. Not the federal government and not their international lackey friends controlled by foreign corrupt banks. End of story. Let's get out of here. Americans have an important decision to make. You're looking at a map of what the United Nations currently controls. They control up to 60% of Alaska and massive areas of the continental United States of America. But the frightening point is what they're planning to take over under the guise of environmentalism. But truthfully what it is a Trojan horse for an international taxation system. And the president has extended them the powers to carry this out. That's why we must get to the Congress and with the people and bring forward this information. That is what they wish to take control of. All areas in red are little to no human use. And all areas in yellow are buffer zones. This is a Trojan horse for an international taxation system. That is the UN's dream ever since the League of Nations failed in 1918. There you have it. Core reserves, little to no human use, yellow, buffer zones, normal use zones of corporation. It goes on and on. And all the facts and all the documents have been laid out in front of you here today. You're probably asking why you haven't heard about this in the mainstream press. You probably haven't heard about the actual treaties, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. You probably also haven't heard about the people that have been standing up against this. People like Congressman Ron Paul, Republican Libertarian from Texas, who introduced H.R. 901 in the 105th Congress to restore sovereignty to our national parklands. There's the choice. We left northern Arizona and traveled back into California on our way to San Francisco to categorize more loss of U.S. sovereignty with Mikhail Gorbachev at the Presidio Naval Base, also part of a UN takeover through the national park system. But before we did that, we dropped by the Los Padres National Park, also taken over by the United Nations. It seems they've taken over every corner of our civilization. The first United Nations UNESCO meeting was held in 1968 in San Francisco at the Presidio Naval Base when it was still a naval base. It was then turned over to the Park Service and subsequently turned over to United Nations control. Mikhail Gorbachev has several foundations there, the Gorbachev Foundation and Green Cross and Green Shield. The people that enjoy themselves on the beach never know and never even suspect the loving, smiley-faced tyranny that is growing in the bosom of their community. Right there to your lower left-hand corner is the Presidio Naval Base, where Mikhail Gorbachev sits firmly ensconced. Let's go ahead and give him a visit. This is an aerial photograph of the Presidio Naval Base, and where you see the crooked cross is the place where Mikhail Gorbachev's foundations reside, right underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, just like a troll. There's a lot of strange activity going on at our national parks, a honeycomb of foreign, corrupt foundations. You're looking at the U.S. headquarters for the Gorbachev Foundation here in San Francisco at the Presidio Naval Base. Mr. Gorbachev also heads up another elitist foundation about a mile from here inside the Presidio.
called Green Cross. Now, Green Cross claims that they're for the environment, but really they are a big front group for power grab money mongers in Europe and New York and Boston and other places, the international corrupt crime cliques, as I call them. And it's the scary part about it is this is going on. This is the Gorbachev Foundation. No one has posted it here. It says no trespassing, and no one seems to care that this entire beautiful naval base has been turned into a hive of anti-constitutional behavior. I mean, these guys are for socialism. They are for land grabs. Everything you can imagine. I mean, we'll drive through and show you some pictures of just some of the foundations. The Center for Sustainability. Well, that means telling people they can't build on their own land. It's all about controlling people and telling people what you can do. And I thought it was just Gorbachev and a couple of foundations here. Now we've been driving around. Everywhere we look, we see elitist foundations that I've read about. So this entire place is pretty much a propaganda base for servants of the elite. I'm sure it's a training and a spawning ground for their propaganda. And it's just sad to see beautiful San Francisco and the beautiful historical Presidio base that's been some form of military base going back to 1776 when the Spanish were here, turned into again, a hive of rationale for corruption. That's what we've got going on here.
The Thoreau Center for Sustainability. Now, that's a key word, sustainability. We'll tell you a little bit more about what that's a buzzword, a catchphrase for.
Since the Park Service has gotten the Presidio in '94, we find out what they're really all about. And they seem to never learn new tricks because, again, they're just an arm of the federal government grabbing land. So, who does the Park Service give buildings to on the sites? Energy Foundation Institute for Global Communications. Let's walk on down and see a few more of the lovely institutes and foundations that are so concerned with stealing your property. Because that's the best way to get property. You don't buy it, you go lobby government and pay off politicians, and they let you steal it. It's wonderful. Here's another one of the many elitist foundations, the Center for Sustainability. And they have these large complex of beautiful buildings here that the Park Service has allowed them to have. And what we have to understand is sustainability is a code word for the government coming in and stealing your land and zoning it strangely so that people like this and their big bank interest can control your life. Because private property is the last bulwark, except for the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, against thug behavior. Plain and simple, that's what it comes down to. Sustainability. Watch out for that word. It has infiltrated all our institutions of higher learning, and the young people are out there spouting it all day. Very, very dangerous trend. It's socialism. It's feudalism. It's the serfs can't have their own land. The government says what you can and can't do. And these buildings here pump out propaganda to rationalize all of this behavior. Sir, I appreciate you taking out this time to talk to us about U.S. sovereignty. What's your name?
My name is Herb Meyer. I live in Larkspur, California. I'm a former Air Force officer, and I've just been down at the commissioning ceremonies for the Hopper, which is a new missile cruiser being commissioned here in San Francisco. I'm very concerned about foreign governments, people intruding on our sovereignty upon our United States, taking over what is our country. I'm very concerned about the Clinton administration and how he's given away the world and what he's done with people like the Chinese and what's going on. I'm very concerned about what's happening in our country. I think it's about time that the United States people wake up to what's going on, and it's about time that we take our country back into our hands and get rid of some of these liberal people that are just totally irresponsible in what they're doing.
Are you familiar with the Gorbachev Foundation and the Green Cross Foundation and the World Forum Foundation here at the base?
No, I'm not intimately familiar with them. I've heard about the Gorbachev Foundation, but I'm not familiar with the details that are going on. But I am concerned about foreign nationals and what's going on.
So, in your opinion, it's a travesty for so many international foundations and front groups of corruption to be setting up shop here at the base?
Absolutely. This is our base. This is our country. It's not theirs. They shouldn't be here.
I mean, what is it called when someone that swears an oath to protect and defend the Constitution lets in foreign spies and directs the Park Service and others to open up every avenue they can for historical sites to foreign foundations? What's that called?
I believe that's called a traitor.
And so textbook is high treason?
High treason, they should be treated accordingly. Accordingly would be to get them out of office, first of all, but if it need be, we have shot traitors before.
As we leave San Francisco, we set our sights for Oregon and the Pacific Northwest of Washington State. We're going to show you even more of what's happening in our country and document every inch of the way. It was sad to see the unsuspecting San Franciscans. Most of them had no conception of what was going on or what was nestled in their community. And most of them probably thought it was popular and nice. Well, we've got a lot more information to show you as we travel around the country.
We're now just north of San Francisco on a beautiful stretch of Highway 1 at Point Reyes National Seashore, and it's also United Nations biosphere. So before San Francisco, in the mountains is now biosphere. Gorbachev's got part of the Presidio naval base, a national treasure, and on the other side of San Francisco, just north, they've got a stretch of Highway 1 that's now under international control. I mean, they've just got everything. Now let's go on down the road a little bit more and see what we find down there. We're fixing to enter the Redwood National and State Parks here in Northern California. And they're being dishonest as usual. This is designated as a World Heritage and Biosphere Zone with international control, but they don't post that. They've taken that down, we're told here. But if you call the Interior Department, Bruce Babbitt, they'll confirm the truth. And as we were driving, we were talking about something. You know, in southern Arizona, they've got the pipe organ cactus monument, the biggest cactus in the world, over 40 feet tall. In northern Arizona, they've got the biggest canyon in the world under their control, the Grand Canyon. They've got the biggest trees under control in the world. Every national treasure that America has that's the biggest and the best in the world, the UN is now getting control of. Very, very frightening. We've got to do something about it.
We're looking at a large map of Redwood National and State Park. Up Redwood Creek is an area known for its large trees. Here in the Tall Trees Grove is the first, the third, and the fifth tallest trees in the world, measured in 1963 as I indicated by National Geographic.
What is this right here? I saw this diagram, and I find this to be just incredible. It shows the Statue of Liberty, and it shows the world's tallest tree, the sequoia, and it's 367. That's just unbelievable.
It is.
A question we have is, we have seen some of the parks, and it says that some, like the Grand Canyon, gets an international designation as a World Heritage Site.
Yes. This is a World Heritage Site also, which means that the United Nations simply wants to single out this area, this particular piece of real estate. Monuments are created by the President through the Antiquities Act, very important act. Such things as Yellowstone National Park and others have been created that way.
So the President, through an executive order, can
creates monuments. Congress creates parks. And Congress can, in the case, say, of Death Valley National Monument, make an kind of upgrade, in a sense, the monument into a park. They're both treated equally, but we have in this nation the grandest, probably the most sacred, most historic places in the world, and we've set them aside. It's unique with America. It's being copied throughout the world. People come from all over the world to see these places.
Wasn't it America that first, when Teddy Roosevelt started doing that?
Teddy Roosevelt, during his administration, he created 5 national parks, one of which was Yellowstone, but he also created the U.S. National Forest Service, which is something that not too many people know about. But that was about 1905, you know, and he was one of the leaders in the park movement.
If President Teddy Roosevelt was the father of our national park system, then President Bill Clinton is the father of treasonous behavior, handing them over to the United Nations. You've seen here today that most of the rangers are totally unaware of the real scope and nature, but they all are aware of the UN engaged in helping keep the prime real estate safe.
I'm standing at the base of a 304-foot tree. We're told that some of these trees get over 367 feet tall and live to over 2,000 years. This is a prehistoric forest, a remnant of a forest that stretched over half the United States. It's very important to keep this pristine and under United States control, not under United Nations control, as the precedent is starting to be set.
We're now leaving Northern California and entering into the Pacific Northwest. We'll then travel through the mountain states, all the way through to Oklahoma City and revisit that tragedy. Then we'll wind up in the University of Texas in Austin, Texas, to show you our youth being indoctrinated. Before we left the Redwoods, we were hell-bent on finding the UN sign, and we did find it, hidden behind a rest stop on the back of the building, as they always are.
Hold on. We're about 10 miles from Mount St. Helens, which violently erupted in 1980, destroying everything for about 50 miles in all directions. Now, only 17 years later, the rejuvenation of the incredibly resilient Earth is apparent. Contrary to what the radical environmentalists would have you believe, the Earth is very, very resilient and able to take incredible shocks because the world was formed in fire and destruction. Now, that's not saying that we like what happened here, but certainly we shouldn't let them panic us into giving up our property rights in the name that secretly that will make the world be a safe place. We're going to show you some shots all around this area of beautiful trees that have already grown up to 20, 30 feet tall since the violent eruption in 1980. Look at this. We're only like 11 miles now from the crater itself. One of the biggest volcanic explosions in U.S. history, or the biggest. And I mean, it's ridiculous. The trees are growing. These are little short trees. There's like some 50-foot trees and 30-foot trees down here that have grown. Absolutely hypocritical. Real environmentalism is caring about pesticides being used on your food and things. Not, oh yes, let Carol Browner tax you to drive your car. That's just so bureaucrats can have more jobs. Look at this. We're only like 11 miles outside from the actual blast point of the crater. All this was leveled when it went off in 1980. And look at it now. The resilient Earth. When are we going to start letting them not panic us and get us into a mode of fear, giving up all our rights so the grass will grow? It's the most primitive witch doctor behavior I've ever seen in my life. I just hope the camera can catch this, how the park has come back. You know, it's really, really good to see all the industry and the nice little schools and the happy people living around Mount St. Helens. It's good to see people that have the right outlook on life, in my opinion, that aren't afraid, that are willing to take risks, that have that pioneer wildcat spirit, that don't let the government turn them into little shaking in their boots city people. And by that, I'm not talking people that live in cities. I live in cities, but they want us all to be these cookie-cutter people that are afraid and listen to what they say and think the earth's fixing to die and all the rest of these lies. I mean, this is just a beautiful area around here. It's come back so fast, and it just totally debunks the lies that the establishment tries to push on us. Humans need challenges. Humans need hardship, and I'm not calling for hardship, but I'm saying that a metastasized, weak manila envelope life with $300 in welfare a month and crime in the streets and a big police state with a bunch of know-it-all professors organizing and running the whole thing is a nightmare to me. And I think if they really look out in the world and get out of their little shells and look to middle America and people that really work for a living, there is the wisdom. There is the wisdom. And I'm just tired of their fear-mongering. I want it to stop. I want a new attitude in America. I want people to start fighting back against the corruption. Look at this. We're like 15, 20 miles away from the central eruption point of Mount St. Helens, and people are not running from this. They're living here. They're making livings. And it's just, I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad they're not letting themselves be cowed into fear by the government and its cronies in the media. Now, this park, Olympic National Forest and National Park, is designated. All the beautiful mountains, the rivers, the lakes, everything is all designated UN Biosphere, World Heritage Site, and they have to take a bunch of the rules and regulations from the United Nations. But there is no posting. And as you saw earlier at the Grand Canyon, they attempted to run us off. So what I had heard before we went on this trip is obviously true. They are trying to cover up what's going on. And I don't mean the people down at the lower level. They're just ignorant. A lot of things are being signed over, a lot of executive orders that I've already told you about. This is real. And we need to have Senate hearings or something about it. This is a beautiful park. We'll show you some beautiful scenes of the treasures that are falling under UN control more and more. We're looking for the Biosphere designation or World Heritage Site plaque. All the parks that have those signs, but we've been unable to find it here. Do you have any idea where those are?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
what's our camera for?
Oh, we're just American citizens out filming.
Okay. Biosphere. For the Olympic National Park.
Yes, sir.
I'm with the U.S. Forest Service.
Yeah. Well, that's still Bruce Babbitt, isn't it?
He's the Department of Interior.
Yeah.
Forest Service is the Department of Agriculture.
Yes. Well, we're just curious.
We do share an office. What did you want to know for?
Is it okay to know?
Is it on our information? Got any information on it? On the information?
No, but they have them everywhere. They took down the UN signs at a couple of parks. Yeah. Mammoth Cave, they took them down. People didn't like the baby blue UN signs too much. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to find just the plaques. We're going all over the country categorizing the plaques and actually proving to people.
I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Listen, I really appreciate your help.
Okay.
It's no surprise to me that the people at the parks acted like we were two-headed demons. I talked to Bruce Babbitt's office, and they have been under a lot of heat, and so I'm sure they've told all their people to watch out for people like us. Now we're going to turn back east and go ahead and finish up the second half of our trip. We saw Americans across the nation just trying to enjoy themselves and be left alone. To the establishment, we have this to say to you.
There are problems in our country, yes, we live in troubled times. There are far too many criminals and far too many crimes. Unlocking every window and unbolting every door. The tool I use in self-defense will even up the score. You can rant, you can rave, you can make your demands, and you can take my gun from my cold, dead hands. There are global corporations, they have billions that they pay to the greedy politicians who make sure things go their way. They tax us into poverty and we live from day to day. To them we're useless eaters, we don't get to have a say. You want to crash this Constitution, is that what's in your plan? You can take my gun from my cold dead hand. In every case through history, when genocide was planned, the firearm were gathered up and the opposition banned. The tyrants made distractions and the people looked away. And by the time they realized they couldn't get away, the smiling face on my TV says we should all join hands and help create this vision of a new world order plan. We'll downsize our defenses, give our bases all away to a UN global peace force, and we'll do just what they say. Take your globalist agenda and your
new world order
plans, and you can take my gun from my cold dead hands.
Well, we've been talking about something as we drive through Montana, which has no speed limit, at about 100 miles an hour. Beautiful. We've been driving for 5 or 6 hours when we left Spokane, Washington this morning, and something really, really struck us for the first time. Even in our hotel rooms on this trip, we've heard the term on TV, vanishing wilderness. There's no more wilderness. I got news for you. Since we left Austin, Texas almost 2 weeks ago, all we have seen is endless, as far as the eye can see, 360 degrees around us. Nothing but wilderness, endless wilderness. But these wannabe environmentalists who never even leave the city totally are for the international community snatching up our prime real estate. And where are most of these biospheres located? Outside big populated areas, outside San Francisco, outside Phoenix, outside big cities. They snatch up the prime real estate and then 10 years later hand it over to corporations. It's a huge, huge scam. And you guys are getting conned, okay? Big time.
Get that whole bill up.
All right. We've now reached the north entrance of Yellowstone National Park here in Montana. And let's just read what the important inscription at the front of this old gate reads. For the benefit and the enjoyment of the people, created by an act of Congress, March 1st, 1872. Well, now we've got a different Congress and a different president, and with executive orders and other things, they are handing over more and more control of our parks, this park namely, to international control, and Bruce Babbitt is following the international edicts from the United Nations and Costco, and in about 3 months from now are preparing to shut down the park to cars to certain areas, and you will only be able to get there by bus. And there's more. They're going to make some of the park a wilderness area where people will not be allowed to go. So it's just wide sweeping what's going on. Now let's remember what the inscription says. For the benefit and the enjoyment of the American people that pay to have this park kept up. Not for the benefit of corrupt international cliques who just want to charge us outrageous rates to use our own land. It's all about power, and it's all about getting you used to doing what they tell you to do. I think you need to raise hell. The United Nations has no business telling us how to run our national parks. And look what they want to do now they're getting control. They want to restrict your access and make you go to it by bus. And that's flat wrong.
We dropped by the main visitor center, and they sent us over to the main administration building. We simply wanted to ask what's going on with the United Nations and our parks.
Here you've got existing use motorized, that means where you can drive your cars, and existing non-use motorized. Now, we've heard, and Bruce Babbitt has stated, that they are planning to make the entire park non-motorized. We're trying to find out, actually, and get the actual letter of the law from them. So, again, restrict access to your park. Hey, how you doing?
Fine, how are you?
Oh, I saw somebody look just like you. We're going all over the country doing independent film, and we already talked to Bruce Babbitt's office, and we just wanted to ask questions about the biosphere designation.
I'll have to, you're filming? Well, do you have a filming permit?
Oh, there's a permit?
Yes.
I'm here making my own documentary.
Could you turn off your camera?
I just want to reiterate the fact that everyone was very polite at most of the parks, but once you would get to a park and get to the main upper level areas, they were all very rude. They would tell you to turn the camera off. We would. Then they took us to the back and again threatened us with fines for having a camera in the park. And I said, well, I see cameras everywhere. And they said, well, you're a professional, aren't you? And I said, well, not really. I guess I am. And then what kind of weirdos are you? Got me back in the office, called more of them back there. I got threatened to be arrested at 2 places, and you just saw how polite I was. And then they thought that I had a bug hidden on me or something and wouldn't even hardly talk to me back there. They'd all been advised about dangerous people asking questions. They acted like a military encampment. It was very, very strange. Someone had prepared them. Despite the administration not being very helpful, we did locate the UN signs, both the International Biosphere and the World Heritage Site documents. And that's exactly what they are. They're documents of ownership, of control. They have executive order behind them. Now there is a good document, an American document from March 1st, 1872 by an act of Congress that created Yellowstone Park. And of course it was prominently displayed for everyone to see, whereas the UN documents cast in bronze were discreetly hidden on the back wall of the theater. So there you have it. Good documents, documents that they're proud of, and then the other documents that they hide on the backs of buildings or on the back walls of the visitor theater area. This is a cover-up. We've talked to the rangers. Now we're going to talk to the common people visiting the park and ask them what they think about the plans to shut it down to cars, double prices, and have other restrictions.
It's very scary to see what the top level people here behave like. And, you know, I guess nobody seems to care anyway, so I guess it's just what's going to happen now in the country is they're going to pretty much take everything from us. You see, if they can take your parks from you, your national treasures, if they can restrict access and manipulate you and get you to accept all their lies, then what can they do next? It goes on and on. It leads back to private property rights. And we all know that with the incredible high rate of property taxes in this country now, in your locales, in your states, that there really is nothing left at this point. There is no First Amendment, there is no Second Amendment. It's all being totally eroded at a rapid rate. And once they get private property, it's the last bulwark of freedom.
What do you think? It's all going to become private in no time at all?
Well, that's kind of how it works.
Is this a stepping stone?
Well, in the name of keeping it sovereign and not private, some of the Rockefeller interests, turn of the century, they started the first environmentalist foundations. I'm not sure if you, and most people don't know that, but a lot of the big foundations were started with money that they put up. And really, it's a rationale. Down in southern Mexico, and it's not happening here yet, but in Yucatan, where there's biospheres and World Heritage Sites, they push the Indians off their land, and that's what they are. They're Indians down there too, the Mayans and people. They push them off their land under the guise of environmentalism, give them a little bit of money. They have to go to Mexico City and work like slaves. And then once they go up there, boom, that's it. They're all up in the city, and they put up biosphere signs. And my dad was down there, and he saw biosphere signs. He said, oh, well, that might be good. And like these little ghost towns out in the country and like in the woods and the jungle and stuff. Then he went into a nice hotel he was staying at and saw brochures how to buy biosphere. So kind of what they do is...
So we're talking about stepping stones.
It's just, yeah, it's just they lay down even more corruption down there. And so it's already happening there.
Right.
And if you look at it, half our debt's held by foreign banks, foreign countries.
Right.
So it's the next step towards, 10 years it's a biosphere. Then they restrict access. Then they say, well, we're going to build a rich condo community here. What do you think about them restricting and planning in just a few months, they say, to restrict vehicle access to this park and make everyone pack on buses and double the rates?
No, I don't agree with that. I think people should be, I mean, this is a federal agency that runs this, and it's our tax dollars that pay for it. I'm willing to pay whatever it is to get into the park, but let me drive my own vehicle and don't ship me in like cattle or whatever. And that's what it is. They're shipping them in. I mean, I've seen so many buses in here. It's incredible. These tours that are coming in, and that's fine. It's still a private company doing it.
Well, it's those private companies lobbying the interior and lobbying Congress and people to do this so they make more money.
Okay, well then I guess I don't like it.
Absolutely.
I like, we brought our kids out here because this is what we were afraid of. We thought we got to get them out here now before it's gone, and that's why we're here. That's basically what it boils down to.
And would you say that it's pretty sick and pretty just absolutely ruthless to, in the name of the environment, hijack environmental treasures so you can later subdivide them?
Yeah, I think that's wrong. Yeah, ruthless is how you put it. Okay, I'll agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Talking about shutting down the park to vehicles and making everyone pack on buses to come here. Don't really? No. All right, thanks for the help. Have a good one. I think we need more interviews. And come in on buses.
Doesn't sound like a very good idea to me.
Well, yes, you're the person.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, you know, if we had to do that.
And you're the person that pays the taxes to upkeep this place.
That's right, yeah. And the fees to get in, of course.
And, you know, it's only a first step just to see what the government can do to public lands and then next private property, because it seems like more and more they have their eyes on public property and private property.
Well, they're doing a lot by executive orders, you're saying that it shouldn't be done without the voters' approval.
And it's like an executive order is almost admiralty law. It's like military law.
Well, it doesn't seem like it's the American way, does it? It seems like that's the way they do it in more or less the communist countries and versus the United States where we vote on things.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, sir.
Okay.
Y'all are the owners. I mean, we bought into this whole federal government type deal, and now they're telling us that we can't even use what we supposedly own?
Well, I don't know. I'd rather...
Yeah. Turns this over to the United Nations, and they got a plaque down at the main central office. But it'd probably be easier just not to think about it.
How come they didn't start you with the conspiracy theory?
It's not a conspiracy theory. There's a bronze plaque right up there, ma'am. You see that right there? They talk about a Hollywood movie rather than the bronze plaque in the executive order. That is what's wrong with America, ladies and gentlemen. People have been taught, bred from a foot tall, absolutely not to care, while they're being raided by the government, which is controlled by corrupt corporations. And when I say that, I mean the top 20. What people think is rich is a joke in this country. They think a nice house and a nice car is wealthy. And that's why it's so easy for the establishment to manipulate people. You notice the well-informed people would talk to us and knew of the executive orders, only a few. And they're probably the people who've actually done well economically because they were able to sift through the lies. But the rest of America seems to love being conned. It's like they get into being lied to, and they get an incredible thrill out of the whole thing. That is painful to me. That's why I'll continue to make these documentaries. I will continue to rant and rave on the radio about factual information. And if people don't have the inner strength to rise up to a threat, foreign or domestic, and stand up for U.S. sovereignty, then I feel really, really sorry for them. Because that's where we are in America today. We are under siege. We're losing our property rights as we speak. Y'all heard the news? They got a plaque up there. This has been signed over to United Nations control. But some lady said, I've seen the movie Conspiracy Theory. She won't go look at the plaque up at the front visitor center. That'd be too hard. She'll just say, oh, another conspiracy theorist. We're now inside the Rocky Mountain National Park here in central Colorado. A very, very beautiful park with mountains and streams and creeks. And here is a map in front of you of the area that is being taken over by the United Nations and other international groups now that President Clinton has been signing executive orders doing that. And I guess in a way it's only karma, or you reap what you sow, because we took it from the Indians, my ancestors did, and I guess it's being taken from us now by Europe. The people we ran away from to come to this country are now coming back and taking, I guess, charge of their slaves again. So again, this entire area is coming under United Nations control, and it's been a process that started in 1968 and now is beginning to come to fruition, and now they're going to start restricting access to the park and other parks, and I'm sure in 10 years from now, after they've gradually gotten us used to losing control of our public lands, they'll start subdividing it for the corrupt top 20 corporations that make their money out of crime and manipulation of governments, not out of creation. So that's what's going on here. And the middle class, be aware, you are the enemy in this third world war that is silent. Have you seen the bronze plaque that's hanging up right inside that makes this an international biosphere? It says UNESCO.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now I know what you're talking about.
Well, what's your opinion? Do you think America can run its parks, or do you think we need international help?
Oh, I think we can run our own parks. That's a personal opinion. It's not a, you know.
So.
I'm not speaking for anyone else.
Oh, I understand. Why do you think that we can run our own parks?
Oh, our own parks with the federal government here in the United States?
Yes.
Or each one individually? I think each one individually can do a wonderful job in running their own parks.
Absolutely.
Too.
Local control is always better.
And we're getting local control. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am aware that they're, well, exactly what's happening.
A certain percentage of the fees, the increase in the fees, is going to stay in each park, each individual park.
Well,
that's brand new. That's a whole new concept. And it's wonderful. And they've also increased the fees, which is also, I think, wonderful.
Yeah.
Doubled in some instances. And I just don't think you can pay enough to be in this kind of beauty and this kind of atmosphere. I really
Well, I'm on. Well, I'm.
That's my personal feeling. I think it's just a wonderful place.
Well, it is wonderful that we have these national parks, but it's not wonderful that she's totally uninformed. Yes, they've doubled the rates. Yes, they plan to increase them more. And yes, they give the locales a small percentage. That's how they got them to sign on to the new federal supranational program. But I asked her more, and she, again, had never heard of the United Nations plaque hanging inside the place where she worked. It's all being done cunningly, gradually. Now the documentary changes. We're done with the national parks and the UN takeover. Now we're going to go to Oklahoma City and back to Austin, Texas to expose the UN here in town, taking over our youth.
Ma'am, I want to ask you about K-Tag. What exactly is K-Tag?
It's an automatic transponder, automatic toll system. You get a little transponder you put on your windshield.
So,
it opens the gate for you. You're billed for it.
So you put an automatic transponder on your car. Part of the new smart highway system, or? I love it too. I'm gonna get one right in my forehead. Thanks a lot. We just drove through a toll road here in Kansas, and they're putting in these chips in your cars where you just drive right through it. I said to the lady, I said, do you like that? What do you think about that? And she goes, I think it's great. The lady that works here, and I forgot to tell her, oh, so you like something that's gonna make you lose your job. And plus, in a few years, you'll just have transponders in your cars to make sure you've paid your taxes. It's Pandora's box. But hey, it's a great idea. We're going to be slaves. I love it. I'm scanning, urine testing for driver's licenses. Just great. I'm excited. Let's get back on the roads. Go pay more tolls and have transponders.
I'm standing at about the point where Timothy McVeigh supposedly parked the truck bomb, the fuel oil fertilizer bomb that destroyed the Murrow building.
Since April 19th, 1995, masses of evidence have come out. People have seen the newscast from the first day where they reported multiple bombs. Experts like General Benton Parton, ex-head of Air Force Weapons Development, Ted Gunderson, FBI chief, have documented with the U.S. Geological Survey's own seismographs that there were multiple explosions, that the building was blown out, and that it was impossible for a Ryder truck filled with even premium-grade military explosives to cause that damage. Now, there was probably a Ryder truck used as a diversion, and again, that corresponds to the multiple seismograph explosions shown by the state and federal agencies. But the media has chosen not to report on this. Now, here's the key point. They told you about a big crater. Newsweek had to show you an illustration because they didn't have any video evidence. Well, here is the video evidence. A pile of rubble. The building was blown out. Now we're fixing to show you some newscast with more conflicting evidence. There you had the pile of rubble, not a crater.
We want to update our audience that the Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found in the AP Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Mike, you're still with us, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and I might tell you in addition to that that in fact what we were told at the scene a few minutes ago was that in fact 2 different explosive devices were found in addition to the one that went off.
So a total of 3.
A total of 3, and of course
have is that one device was deactivated. Apparently there's another device, and obviously whatever did the damage to the Murrah building was a tremendous, very sophisticated explosive device.
Unfortunately this time, because as we've told you, 2 other explosive devices were found that were not detonated, and they were larger. The first bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and diffused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first. And what these later devices are doing to the rescue effort, time is so valuable right now as they try to get to these people who perhaps somehow are still hanging on. But there were 4 bombs set to go off, according to ATF officials.
Only President Clinton and his associates stood to gain from the April 19th, 1995 bombing. It created a police state. Thank God people like Representative Charles Keyes have been standing up against butchers like Reno.
President Clinton just called Governor Frank Keating, and he says that 3 FBI anti-terrorist teams are en route to Oklahoma City right now.
I've been able to confirm that it was a car explosion. Now, that word coming to us from Mayor Ron Norick earlier, 1,200 pounds of explosives parked out in front of the federal building. And ATF has confirmed that as well.
You just saw a 180-degree change in the newscast. The government line.
Here you see a building right across the street, barely even damaged. And then, as you turn towards the Alfred P. Murrah building right across the street, you see absolute devastation. And you can't really see what happened here because they hurriedly destroyed the building, the crime scene, as quickly as possible and kept independent examinators and examiners and experts out. So we'll never really have a true accounting of what happened here. All I'm calling for is a real investigation. And the people of Oklahoma City have been calling for an investigation. So you've got ex-military people, politicians, police chiefs, all across the board smell a huge, gigantic, stinking rat. And it doesn't matter to our government. They're just going to use our children as much as they can in those deaths to get as much gas mileage for big government and police state as they can possibly get. And I'm telling you something, that is flat wrong. Frederick Whitehurst, who was one of the heads of the FBI crime lab, resigning and saying that they were manufacturing evidence in this case and others. Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah, I heard about it. It just, I don't know if one man could have done this, but so far that's the only man we've convicted, so I have to go by the way the courts are.
What do you think about the multiple seismograph evidence from the University of Oklahoma and the U.S. Geological Survey that picked up multiple explosions?
I didn't hear much about that. And I feel sorry for these people. I got people that live here, and they're not too sure what's going on around here, so.
And I've just been asking people that look like they're knowledgeable. Y'all familiar with what happened in 1933 in Germany? The Reichstag? Y'all remember that? It happened to their parliament building?
Right, that's right. They blew that up. Hitler blew that up to get rid of or to make it look like it was the current government.
Communist, yes.
Or the communists.
Yes,
yeah.
He wanted fear, he wanted some terrorism bills, and he got them. They didn't really get all the stuff they wanted here in America. Are you familiar with what Nero did in Rome?
Yes, he burned it, and that's where we're going right now.
All right, thanks a lot. Nice to meet you, Charles. So what's your opinion on what's going on in the government right now?
You know, hey, it's just, you know, it's too big. Government is basically too big.
Too big for us to be able to watch.
You know, that's right. You know, they offering your business, my business, and everybody else's business. They tax you to death. That's definite, you know, and they also trying to tell, basically, you know, trying to run the state's business. Everybody else, you know, it's just, you know, just basically got too big. You know, fat get fatter, rich get richer.
That's it. Charles?
It definitely ain't us.
Charles, how do you feel 2.5 years after the tragedy of what happened at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building?
Oh, it's going to happen again.
And who do you think was involved in that? Do you think it was McVeigh alone or with others, or do you think it was the government perhaps trying to scare us into submission?
Oh, he wasn't alone, definite, you know, because can't no one or two guys pull that off by themselves, you know. And for government building to get blew up, you know they gonna know what's going on. You know, it's more than what it is. Most definitely.
It's also kind of funny that that building was so demolished, but one right across the street was barely even damaged.
The only way that could happen is that they know the specifics and where to put the bomb at. You know,
real experts.
That's right. You know, and hey, just like I say, he was an army. You know, he's in the army, so of course he's trained in military tactics. And you just think about it, you know, the way that building was bombed and blew up, and the way it went up
was very professional.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Do you think that there have been any unanswered questions about what's happened with the bombing? Do you think the media has done a good job or has tried to find out the truth?
Yeah, I think the media have tried to, but you know, it's covered up. You know, it's covered up. What about, you know, y'all? You got to look at it just case in point. John Doe #2. You know, they tell you don't even think about looking for him.
Just forget about him.
But you know, they just say. But you know.
Did you live here, Charles, at the time of the bombing?
I live here. I work right here in this building. I was at work. I was at work.
Did you feel it?
Yeah, I thought this building was blowing up.
How many blasts did you feel?
2.
And how far apart were they?
Oh, probably about boom, and then it's boom.
And so it wasn't a rumble, it was 2 separate booms.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the seismograph information that distinctly shows 2 separate bombings?
I heard people discuss it and the media discuss it and stuff.
Yes. Are you familiar with Mr. Keys, Representative Keys, that believes the government may be involved?
Yeah, Tom Keys from Oklahoma? Yes. Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Who do you think stood to benefit from that heinous bombing?
Basically, the government by them wanting to do what they want to do, to be able to do come and go as they please, look, search, siege, or whatever. You know, they benefit more when stuff like this happens.
So you think it was important for them to, the American people were getting too uppity. We were tired of getting pushed around, and so suddenly something happens, and now government gets to come back and be big brother again.
Now they got a reason. Basically, you know, all it takes is a little for them to do a lot. You know, they basically do, you know, have come and go as they please, do what they want to, as it is right now.
Are you familiar, or are you aware of the fact that all 17 of the ATF agents and over 20 of their clerks and secretaries were all off the 9th floor, but the rest of the building was filled to the gills with children and other people?
Yeah, I'm aware. You know, the media made that aware of everybody, you know, and it's like, it makes you think. You know, of all the people who should have been there 9 o'clock in the morning, it's them, but they conveniently was out, or either out the court, or either doing their thing, you know, but they wasn't in the building. It makes you wonder, did they really know what's really going on?
So we're about a block and a half away from the federal building right now?
Right.
Or from the remains of it?
Yeah. And
you were at work on April 19th, 95 when it happened, and you felt 2 distinct explosions?
Yes, I did.
Where were you when the bomb went off?
Me and him were standing next together.
And y'all are just about a block away?
Building right here.
And you felt 2 distinct blasts?
Yeah.
Both
of us fell down trying to get out the building. You know, it was just that much of a shake around there.
What was the first blast? Was it bigger or smaller than the second?
It was bigger. The second one was smaller, but you could distinctly hear it.
So it popped like a firecracker?
No, it wasn't a firecracker.
A firecracker in your ear?
No,
it was a big one.
Yeah, it was big.
Let me ask y'all a question. Y'all know what a police state is, right? Yeah. It's when the police run everything and you don't have any rights. Do y'all feel that we're moving into a police state?
Yes, definitely, for sure.
And again, that's me personally, that's not an attack on the cop on the beat. I mean, thugs and criminals control our police forces now, both state and national and local. And so that's why it's so hard to get a crime punished nowadays.
True, it is.
Seems like if you steal $100, they'll put you in prison, but if you steal $1 million, they'll give you a medal.
Yeah, and a little time to the side, you be on the side. Yeah.
Do y'all have any other comments about what's been going on? What's the solution to the problem? Donnie?
There's a lot of answers, different solutions.
What was that you were saying?
Divide and conquer, that's what it is.
That's an old game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate y'all's time. The facts are irrefutable. Treason is being engaged in. President Clinton bragged on Air Force One in 1996 to the press that he owed the revival of his presidency to the Oklahoma City bombing. General Parton, Ted Gunderson, Anthony Hilder, and many people with expertise in this area have documented what is happening. People like Jane Graham, who was a survivor inside the Murrah building, saw strange utility personnel placing packages against pillars in the lower areas of the building. We have photographs of the Ryder truck being loaded with fuel oil at Camp Grouper, and that is in northern Oklahoma. And you add this with the newscast before and then conflicting afterwards. You add this with Newsweek having to use an artist rendition to show you the 8-foot deep, 30-foot around crater. And then when you see the actual video evidence, it's a heap of rubble that's been blown out into the street, not in by a truck bomb. There were 2 explosions, the seismographs show that, and the only people that gained from this were those that are for federal power. That's the evidence, and it's irrefutable. And if that's not enough for you, Carol Howell, a confidential FBI informant,
warned the FBI before the bombing that the Aryan Republican Army and Andre Strassmeyer were planning to bomb the building. Now see some evidence of concentration camp facilities being built in America under the guise of FEMA going back over 30 years, but it is accelerating.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was,
May I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
And tragically, the only member who got close was Jack Brooks, and he was stopped by the chairman. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, you do have those standby provisions, and the plans are there, and the statutory emergency plans are there, whereby you could, in the name of stopping terrorism, apprehend, invoke the military, and arrest Americans and hold them in detention camps.
We've been around the nation categorizing enemy activity. Now we're headed back to Austin, Texas to expose the activities there.
We're here at the Model United Nations Day, January 16th, 1998. We went in and discussed with a lot of people, a lot of issues, and saw the youth being educated, being trained in the ways of world governance and the growth of the world government control apparatus. Many of these people don't understand who controls the United Nations. And you're fixing to see that from the interviews that we conducted. And that's the scary part. There's so many good people engaged in this at the lower level, and that creates the group psychology, the peer pressure, that it is a good organization. I think we've conducted a balanced report, and the excerpts from interviews with children, teachers, and administrators, and the local United Nations recruiting organization for adults, professors, and children was here also. This is where our country is. This is where it's moving. And the scariest point of this entire discussion that we had today and this report is that we are severely lacking in teaching our youth about the Constitution of the United States and about the government of the United States. But there's plenty of money and there's plenty of help from the establishment to teach them about the United Nations. And that doesn't surprise me a bit, because we know that there is a move towards global government, abolition of private property, the destruction of national sovereignty in the name of the group collective. And what did David Rockefeller say about the public schools? What did he say about government training centers, or what he called the public schools? He called it helpless people yielding themselves to our molding hands. And these lovely, intelligent, but very young people are very easily molded by the establishment today. So let's go inside the teaching center here at the University of Texas and find out exactly what's happening to our youth of this nation.
What's your name under here, Observer?
Maybe it's just the same publisher. I read one that was called Simplify Your Life. That's what it's called.
Oh, there's a whole battery of them. Otherwise, the pages are not supposed to let you.
One of the things.
Oh, good.
If you don't have. So, we have lots of things, lots of plans, and we think we have a great conference.
Who are some of the sponsors of the conference?
Well, we are the United Nations Association of Austin, and this year the League of Women Voters is co-sponsoring us.
Who is the head of the United Nations organization here in town?
Frank Cooksey, a former mayor.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a different court. But this is, actually this court, the International Court, meets in The Hague.
That's in the Netherlands, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I see y'all are wearing little worlds there. Do y'all? Y'all care about the world?
Yeah.
Y'all are good people, aren't you?
Yeah.
Y'all think the United Nations is helping?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to like make world peace.
A great way to make world peace. Because through global governance, we can knock out all the troublemakers.
Yes.
Is that what y'all been talking about?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I hope y'all have an enjoyable time.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
What do you think about the United Nations?
Cool.
Yeah, it's very good. It's like an organization. I think it's kind of fun. It is really cool. It decides a whole lot of world issues.
Yeah, they might be. Yeah.
World peace and stuff.
It's really exciting. Nifty.
Well, that's great. Let's get it. Model United Nations just one more than many committees. Helpless young people yielding themselves to the elite's hands. I could tell them about the people that really control it, but they never understand it. It's this petty taste of power that gets them to believe that they're really doing something good when they're really working for something bad. Notice your youth are not being taught about the Constitution. They are being taught about world constitution, world proletariat, orders from headquarters. So, Mr. Schofield, how long have you been involved in Model UN?
This is my fourth year. I started at our first conference, the Central Texas Model UN, during the first conference. And it's my fourth year, and now I'm the Secretary General. Before the conference, basically putting getting all the nations to come, all the students, working with the schools, getting the pages and putting the staff together. And then once we're here, I just kind of direct, make sure everything's going smoothly, and kind of just observe. Let the secretary go to work.
How many years have they been having Model United Nations here in the United States?
The oldest conference, I believe, in the U.S. is 40 years, and that's high school, and the oldest college conference is 35 years.
How long has it been here at University of Texas?
This is the fourth year for the conference. I believe the group is since 1983, and way back in the 1960s, early 60s, there was a conference here in UT.
Actually, Secretary Schofield was wrong. The United Nations was first called the League of Nations and failed in 1918 under Woodrow Wilson. It's a push for a global taxation system. And our youth are being indoctrinated. They're being brought by their high school teachers and their junior high teachers to UT and universities across the nation to learn about giving up our sovereignty. They use careful semantics in choosing the term join the nationwide movement for a more effective United Nations. It's not a nationwide movement, it's a worldwide movement. Worldwide movements are nothing new. And all through history we've seen the blood and carnage. The UN packages all its movements in the name of the children. But if you really study their history, you find individuals like Kirk Valtime. The fact is, Kirk Valtime, Secretary General of the United Nations from 1972 to 1982, was a top-level SS officer, a death camp operator. Yes. And the United Nations attempted to protect him. These are the same people that sit around and talk about America's civil rights and America's human rights. It's all an excuse. It's a package. It's a facade. Again, Kirk Valtime, Secretary General from 1972 to 1982. And this fact cannot be ignored. This is the history of global government and pushes for absolute power. And we have the same type of individuals here in our nation today. There you have UN peacekeeping forces in Somalia and Rwanda, torturing, burning, making children drink salt water, eat worms, cutting people's heads off. This is the modern United Nations, but you won't see this in the mainstream press. This is a push for empire. They also give awards to China. We've already gone over China's human rights, the slave labor camps, the euthanasia, the infanticide. And they've given awards to organizations like NAMBLA. They've allowed them into the United Nations.
See, I have photographs here, and I have other ones. I actually have color copies of these, but I just brought these of them burning Somali children and putting them in cages to die. These are Belgian UN troops, of them making them eat vomit and worms and salt water and cutting their heads off. In fact, if you have time, I'll try to show you some photographs of that. What do you think about that?
It's torture.
This has been in the Village Voice, the New American, both sides of the political spectrum, and it hasn't been in your mainstream press. These people have been punished by their respective countries, but not by the United Nations at The Hague.
Well, so, wait, describe to me again, like, what exactly is going on in these pictures?
Well, this young man's being forced to, by Belgian forces in Somalia, to drink a mixture of saltwater vomit and eat worms. And then it also talks about how, in the Village Voice, how they got, actually had the entire article at home, how they got them inside so that the Hutus, they got a whole group of Hutus inside a building and then left the compound and then let the rivals come in and kill them.
Yeah, and so the American public has been, they haven't
been told about it. You can actually get this issue. No.
Well, then how did you get this issue?
Well, I mean, these are, in Europe, it's widely reported. So you're talking about the atrocities. But you don't think that's the issue. You think these people are just being Machiavellian and trying to hurt the UN by showing these pictures.
Yes, I do, actually.
So you think these pictures it's kind of a good thing that the press has ignored them because the mainstream press understood that these people were just trying to manipulate, so they haven't shown us these pictures.
Well, it seems as though if this was actually such a big deal as this New American makes it to be, it seems like it would be definitely more widespread amount.
Let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with what Pol Pot did in Cambodia? Killed over 2.5 million people. You didn't hear much about that?
Yes, I did, actually. I studied.
Are you familiar with Kirk Waldheim, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations from 1972 to 1982?
No, I'm not familiar.
Do you know who he was? He was a high-ranking SS officer in World War II, and the United Nations knew it, and they fought to protect him, but the world community demanded that he be taken out.
Well, I
remember that name, and that's historical fact, Kirk Waldheim.
Okay.
Really, remember that name, Justin. It's Kirk Waldheim.
Kirk Waldheim?
Yeah, remember that name, Secretary General from 1972 to 1982.
All right, I will.
And find out who pushed for the League of Nations and then later the United Nations, a bunch of transnational corrupt interest. And then they get a lot of good people at the lower levels that believe it's for the kids and all that, but really it's fascism packaged nicely.
I don't know what to say about that.
It's about losing sovereignty.
Really?
Yes.
No.
Well, look, you can ignore them burning the kids, and you can ignore all that, but what you don't want to ignore, and what you can't ignore, is Kirk Waldheim.
I don't understand how I could not ignore him.
Well, I'm just saying that's something that's totally historical.
Oh, okay.
Let me ask you...
Where's this picture taken?
That was taken in Somalia.
In Somalia?
Yes, that's been all over the European press. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with the fact that we hear all day about the atrocities of Hitler, which were horrible and wrong and terrible, and he should have been executed if they could have caught him, and many more like him, and they did?
Yeah.
But you never hear about Stalin, who killed more than he did. Why is that?
I do. I've studied Stalin.
Well, you've studied it, but what do you hear more in the press?
I don't hear much about the Holocaust very much.
Oh, really?
No, not in the press lately.
Well, I'm talking about for 50 years, and we should hear about it. We should see it, but you don't hear much about the atrocities in China, do you? 30 million enslaved labor camps?
I've heard about that, yes.
Oh, but you've heard about it, but we have to be pragmatic and still keep trading in human organs. They sell human organs from political dissidents. Would you have bought lampshade? Would you have bought a lampshade made out of Jewish skin?
No, I would not have.
Well, then why are we saying be pragmatic now with China that's selling human organs? It's the same thing, trading in human flesh.
Well, I certainly disagree with trading human flesh.
Well, then you and the United Nations should stand up against China instead of embracing them and coddling them.
I agree with that.
Good, then get in there and tell them.
All right, I certainly will.
Thank you so much.
You too.
Appreciate it.
Well, you've seen what's going on around the country and here in Austin, Texas, where this was produced. Now you're going to see me, Alex Jones, and about 100 other people go down to the Texas Department of Public Safety and protest thumb scanning, finger imaging for driver's license. Yes, everyone must get it. And according to the Federal Register, President Clinton would like to start random urine, blood, or other tissue sample testing at the driver's license facilities around the nation. Well, don't hear it from me. Hear it from newscast and our cameras that were there on the scene the fateful day that 100 Americans stood up to Big Brother.
Well, getting a driver's license caused quite a stink here in Austin today. You know, in Texas, if you want one of these, well, you have to give your thumbprints. The KISJ Carter shows you why some folks today said they don't want anybody scanning their body parts.
go up, and if they come up and touch me in any way, I'm going to lay down peaceably and let the police state minions drag me away.
Alex Jones wants to renew his driver's license. He also expects to be arrested.
I'm going in there with my passport, my birth certificate, my driver's license, my W-2 form.
But he won't give a thumbprint. Moments after this interview, troopers did arrest him.
If you do not leave now, I will be forced to arrest you. Sir, I'm here to get a driver's license. I have never had a criminal record, and it's time to go.
Jones says fingerprinting gives government too much control. And the next thing you know, they'll ask for urine and blood samples. Rebecca Yoakum walked through the crowd of protesters to renew her license. She didn't mind giving her thumbprint.
I really don't see anything wrong with the thumbprinting, and it's kind of weird how everybody's protesting about it.
But the protesters believe if they don't speak up now, the requirements to drive could get even more personal. With your eye on Austin, I'm Jay Carter.
Alex Jones is now in an Austin jail, and he'll face a disorderly conduct charge. The DPS points out, by the way, that its database of thumbprints helped identify some of the victims of the tornado in Gerald last year, and they say this system helps and protects all of us.
I'm sorry, sir, you're just flat wrong. This has nothing to do with public safety and everything to do with the international tracking grid that's being set up. All you have to do is watch Lockheed, Martin Marietta commercials from the defense industry to Visa commercials. All down the line, they're pushing thumb scanning to buy and sell, and probably within 5 to 10 years, everybody's going to have to do this to buy and sell. And this is all for the IRS to gather intelligence on us. The DPS even admits it. It goes to the federal government. It's all hooked into a national database, and you see the free market supposedly engaged in this. It's all part of a grid of control. And some of you will say, well, what do we have to hide? It's called an invasion of privacy, ladies and gentlemen. It's called innocent until proven guilty. It's called a government that has a terrible track record of abusing its citizens, and the IRS stealing from innocent people that have broken no laws being abused. I'm just so tired of this. Everything under the color of law. This is totally unconstitutional. Now let's get to the actual video of the actual protest.
Blood testing, urine testing, things of that nature. So for those of us that are not in the know, and for those of us who really are not in this, as you are, could you kind of explain what's going on here?
Sir, I have given you the executive order put in the Federal Register by Bill Clinton in 1997. He has announced it. He says that urine and blood testing that they plan to do nationwide is only for people 18 and under. It is for 25% of large state populations randomly selected, and they're thumb scanning us like criminals. Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty?
I heard that. Several forms of identification.
I have 8 forms of identification, from my passport to my old driver's license to my W-2 form, my tax form, to my social security number, to my car insurance, and I also have another picture ID. And that had better be enough for them, ladies and gentlemen. This is really getting out of control. Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? Why are Americans laying around like sheep and allowing themselves to be treated like criminals? We're law-abiding citizens.
At what point do you expect, or do you expect at all, for what you were talking about, the blood testing, the drug screening, is that really coming?
Sir, I have given you the federal documents that are mandating the states to do that. Clinton in '92 mandated the thumb scanning. It has been adopted by many of the states. Texas since '93. He mandated it in late 1997 for '98 to be implemented. Now that's up to the states, and that's why we're drawing attention to this. Thumb scanning and no further. I'm against thumb scanning, but now they want this urine and blood testing. This is the slippery slope. And to those out there that say, what do I have to hide? I am innocent until proven guilty. I have no criminal record. Alex Jones has no criminal record, and we should not be treated like criminals.
I don't want to ask what you have to hide, but what is it that makes you so passionate about this?
Our government cannot be trusted. Even this month's, liberty. Even this month's Popular Mechanics talks about the government testing chemicals and biologicals on our people in the 1950s and 60s. The IRS, you've heard the hearings. There's CIA drug trafficking hearings going on right now in the Congress. This is on television. This government is controlled by a bunch of thugs, in my opinion, and I think a lot of bureaucrats are dupes to it. I just don't trust our government. And our founding fathers warned us not to hate our government, but to fear our government. I should not have to thumb scan and be in a computer. They also digitally capture your signature and your photograph. They could create any false identity they wanted to with your name and your social security number. And many government bureaucrats from the IRS to the EPA have been caught selling information. There are thousands of cases and convictions of this if people would just investigate it. This is an invasion of privacy. That's the most important thing. It's an invasion of privacy. There is no innocent until proven guilty in this country anymore, and Americans across the country have got to start standing up against Big Brother. And if they come up and touch me in any way, I'm going to lay down peaceably and let the police state minions drag me away. Okay? Let's get ready to go in here in about 5 minutes. God bless y'all for being here. People stand up. The New World Order, which is transnational, socialism for the rich, can only fail. We're going to defeat these people. We're going to turn their lives upside down on. This federal intrusion is out of control, and it is controlled by the transnational establishment. So it's time for everybody across America to start standing up, because we got people power. Peaceful patriots or the huge military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about. I think I'm afraid of the military-industrial complex that owns our media. I think I'm afraid of the foreign banks. That's who I'm afraid of, not of you people.
Good luck, sir. Hey, buddy. Hey, Jim. How you doing, Ellinger?
All right, sir, we're ready for you.
All right, they're ready for me. Let's go. Come over here and get the pretty little red light. Come on. Isn't that pretty? And they'll put a nice little clinic in here in the next few years for urine and blood testing like Clinton wants. What do I have to hide? I'm a criminal. There we have it. Nice little pretty red light. Get that, Mike. There we have it. Your photograph, they capture your signature, they capture your thumbprint, and now Clinton wants urine and blood, and I've given that to the media, the actual federal register that he wants the states to implement. And I guess it tells them how to put clinics in, and it tells them how to urine and blood test law-abiding citizens not under 18 like the media says.
Hi.
How you doing? I am here with 8 forms of identification. I have my passport. Here's that, my name, and the form you asked me to fill out. I have no criminal record. My name is Alexander Emmerich Jones. Here is my passport. Here is my insurance. Here is another form of ID. Here is my old driver's license. Here is my birth certificate. And here is my W-2 form. And here is 2 more insurance cards, old ones, just so you can double check. It's a health club card.
ID.
Okay.
Good to go. We're going to get you a duplicate right now.
Need for you to answer these first 3 questions.
Take a look at these questions there and go over them things.
So I don't have to thumb scan?
Well, we're going to get to that. You are eventually going to have to. Yes, sir.
But not now.
Not at this point, but you will before we're done with the process.
Why?
Because it's required.
It's required by Bill Clinton in 1992, and it was instituted here in Texas in 1993. I know the code, sir. Are you going to institute his urine and blood testing when he commands you? Are you going to stick a needle in my arm when I have no criminal record?
The only questions I'm going to answer right now are concerning driver's license issuance.
You just follow orders, don't you? So you're saying you're going to deny me the constitutional right to travel if I do not submit to this digital thumb scanning?
What I will tell you, today you will not receive a duplicate driver's license if you do not submit to a thumbprint.
Okay, look, I feel like I'm being raped here.
Well, I would sit down with you for hours and try to do what I could to help you.
Then just give me my license without digitally thumb scanning.
I am not going to violate DPS policy.
Is there a religious exception?
For your exception.
Is there a religious exception?
No. No, sir, there's not.
Everyone must take the mark. A digitally enhanced mark.
I'm not talking about mark.
A digital tattoo.
I know. Your ID, you are good to go.
Yeah, well, if I'm good to go, why do you need my thumbprint?
Because it's part of the procedure of issuing.
It's part of Bill Clinton's law, isn't it? It's an executive order. It's a decree by Bill Clinton. NCIC. Yeah, and if I drive without a license, what's the penalties for driving without a license?
You know, I don't even want to go there.
That's right.
You know why?
I'm asking you.
It doesn't pertain to it.
You're an officer. I'm asking you the law.
I would be glad to sit down.
So you're saying I'll be committing a crime by driving if I don't take your mark?
I would be glad to do anything I can to help you, sir.
Well, see, you're saying...
I'm not against you, and I understand.
Officer Ard, you're sitting here, Sergeant, and telling me that you're all friendly and you're all nice. But I'll be pulled over and given tickets. If I don't pay those, I will go to jail because of my morals and my beliefs. I will not take this. And I'm here to tell you, I already took this in '93, and many people will say, well, you've already taken it. What's your problem with it? Because now I figured out what this is, and I'm opposing all those others that are being herded in here like cattle to be thumb scanned like criminals.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
We don't even need to start there. If I know that you're not going to submit to a thumbprint, why waste your time?
See, right up front.
They will drop, and people are being turned away all day here. So you're saying I pay my taxes, I'm raped by the IRS, which is criminal. You know, it's well known.
And you heard the key word submit.
Submit. He just said I must submit.
There's a lady down the counter.
I'm telling you, I've never been to jail.
I don't know. What do you want me to do for you?
I want you to give me my driver's license. I want my driver's license. I am not a criminal. I may become one today, but that's fine. You're saying you won't take me to jail at 5 if I'm still here.
No, we're not going to take you to jail.
Oh, yeah. This is against the grain of the Constitution. Look, if I don't take the mark, my right to travel is taken. You're taking my rights and telling me that it's no big deal? And now you want a urine and blood test. Bring me the document. Who has the urine and blood testing document? I need it. I'm going to pass these out to people. Ladies and gentlemen, the Federal Register, Bill Clinton, urine and blood testing plan for you. Tell your friends about it. We have got to stand against this. The states are preparing to implement this plan. This is not a joke. This is not the entire document. It gets worse. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a joke to them. Only Coach Penders matters. Only diversions like Rome, the gladiators. If I don't take this, will I not be penalized for not having a driver's license, by not being able to cash a check, by being given tickets that if I don't pay those tickets, I'll be taken to jail. I can't travel out of state. I can't get on board an airplane. And the media is talking about thumb scanning to travel. You're working with the foreign banks and the military-industrial complex. This is all their idea. Read the Military War College from 1968. They planned this. Just because you lay around doesn't mean it's not true. This is not a publicity stunt. I was a lot happier years ago before I got into all this garbage. I'm sick of sheep laying down. I wish you'd get up and do something. Makes me want to vomit. Our forefathers went to World War II and World War I and fought in the Civil War to end slavery, and it means nothing to y'all. We're a bunch of yellow-belly weaklings. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of people laying down like a bunch of jellyfish and rationalizing what's going on. People ought to be ashamed of themselves.
My brother's a cop. Gold star in the arm and be quiet.
Yes, exactly.
Now look very carefully at Mike Cox. He is head public information officer for all of Texas for the DPS. They weren't going to arrest me, but about 15 minutes into the protest, he showed up and things changed dramatically. He walked up, stared at me, turned, walked back to the back. They had a little meeting together, and then they came and arrested me.
If you do not leave now, I will be forced to arrest you.
Sir, I'm here to get a driver's license. I have never had a criminal record. It's time to go. Here I go. Get my stuff for me.
45 patients
Yes, sir.
Change your job. I guess that makes you a mercenary, huh? Paid mercenaries, huh? Got the black gloves on. Yeah, he's got his black gloves on. I guess that makes him tough. I guess that makes him look like a real well-paid mercenary there. We have to do a show tonight. Hey! Yeah, they're pushing everybody. They're pushing us. It's getting ridiculous here.
All my tax dollars pay for this building.
Yeah, he's got a couple of tags.
The DPS was very professional, but they did the classic bait and switch. They got all the troopers on one side of the building and made us think that I was coming out there.
I'm criminal! Look at all this!
I hope we've painted you a picture of what's really happening here in the nation. I got out of jail that night with a Class C misdemeanor, and I'm taking it to court, and I'm sure I'll defeat it with a jury trial. It was a small price to pay, though, to bring light upon the biometric technologies. Well, you've seen it all during this 2-hour documentary. You've seen the UN taking over our parks and the documents, the Chinese moving into some of our military bases, Oklahoma City, documentation of huge concentration camp facilities that have been sprouting up around the country since the early 80s and even before. This is America under siege. I'm not about to tell you what you can do to stop it. You've got to think for yourselves out there. You've got to get motivated and stop reacting and start acting. I'm Alex Jones. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and get motivated. America is under siege.